I didn't lose my husband in a fight. I lost him in a room full of laughter.
The day everything ended didn't feel dramatic while it was happening. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, not even any warning signs I bothered to notice. It just felt ordinary, comfortable, and that was the problem. I woke up before my husband, Daniel, and I watched him sleep for a moment longer than usual. His face was so calm, so unguarded. There was a time when that softness made me feel safe. But somewhere along the way, it started to irritate me instead. I slipped out of bed quietly, not to be kind, but because I didn't want to talk. Daniel always wanted to talk. Questions, connection. I just had places to be, people to impress, a version of myself to maintain. By the time he shuffled into the kitchen, I was already dressed, checking my reflection. He said, "Morning," gently. I just nodded without looking at him. That had become our routine. His presence was constant, predictable. Mine was selective. That night I hosted my friends. It was all wine, laughter, and that familiar circle of women who thrived on competition disguised as friendship. They admired confidence, control, sharp edges. I had learned early on that softness was a currency you lost quickly in their world. Daniel had done everything. Cleaned the house, cooked, set it all up just how I liked it. He even wore the shirt I once told him made him look more professional. I barely noticed. When my friends arrived, I transformed. I became louder, sharper, wittier. Daniel became background noise, a convenient prop for my performance. The jokes started small. A comment about how sweet he was, how patient, how lucky I was to have someone who didn't mind staying in his lane. The laughter followed, and with it that familiar rush of validation, so I went further. I exaggerated stories, framed complaints as humor. I turned our private struggles into public punchlines. When someone joked about our intimacy, I didn't deflect. I leaned in. The room reacted exactly how I wanted it to. At one point, I saw Daniel standing in the doorway. He was just watching me. I saw him, and I chose not to stop. But this time, for the first time, he didn't retreat quietly. He didn't argue or raise his voice. He just looked at me. Not hurt, not angry, just done. Then he left the room. Then he left the house. The party ended quickly after that. My friends made their excuses. The laughter drained away, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. I found Daniel by the door later, a small suitcase beside him. "I'm leaving," he said calmly. I laughed at first, out of reflex. I told him he was being dramatic, that we'd talk in the morning. He just shook his head. "You've been talking for years," he said. I just finally listened. I tried to apologize. I blamed the wine, the pressure, my friends. Nothing landed. "I don't feel safe here anymore," he said. "Not physically. Emotionally." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else. He walked out, and the house felt enormous. Empty in a way that had nothing to do with space. The days that followed were a blur of denial and panic. I called, I texted, I apologized. I justified. No response. Then came the email from his lawyer. The quiet became permanent. I started noticing all the things I had ignored for years. How often Daniel had swallowed his discomfort just to keep the peace. How much of himself he had given up to make room for me. How cruelty had become so normal in our home that I had mistaken it for confidence. The worst part wasn't losing him. It was realizing I had never truly known him because I never bothered to listen. Therapy wasn't dramatic. It was just uncomfortable. Slow, brutally honest. I learned words I never wanted associated with myself: control, contempt, emotional abuse. Months later, I saw Daniel by chance. He was laughing, relaxed. He was standing taller somehow. He didn't see me and I didn't approach him. That was the moment I finally understood what I had lost. Not a marriage. A good man. I went home that night and wrote a letter I'll never send. An apology without excuses. An acknowledgement without expectations. I don't know if he ever forgave me. I don't deserve to know. But I learned something permanent. Love doesn't disappear because someone leaves. It disappears the moment you stop treating the person in front of you like a human being. And sometimes by the time you realize it, all that's left is silence.